Hi, Mr. Salata. It's very nice to meet you.
Great to be here, Emma.
Can you share a time when you changed a long-held belief and what influenced that change?
One of the most important things that I've learned in working in the investment business and making investment decisions is the need to listen to other people's opinions and views more in arriving at important decisions. I think when I was earlier in my career, I felt like I had all the answers and I not had enough humbling experiences in making poor decisions or having investments that had poor outcomes. And once you sort of look back on those experiences and say, wait a second, I remember having these discussions at the time and there was a lot of dissenting views, but I sort of just wasn't listening to everyone's views and therefore not arriving at the optimal decision. I've grown a lot, I think, as an investment person and even just as a human being in learning that listening better and having good people around a table making decisions together usually arrives at better outcomes than just going into a meeting thinking that you know what you want to decide on your own and you're not really that open to listening to other people's opinions. I think that that's been an important part of my development as an investment professional.
Are there any beliefs you feel you will never abandon and why?
I think it's really important to maintain high levels of ethics and integrity in everything that you do. None of us are saints. We all make mistakes in life and in work. But I think it's important to maintain some sort of values as a leader in any business or in any personal setting that you hold to no matter what, even if it's difficult. And and I think that kind of sets the tone for everybody around you, whether it's in your family or whether it's in business. If you have certain values and certain behaviors, it kind of sets the tone for the culture and values of all those around you. So I think that is super important. At EQT, the firm that I work at now, one of our most important values is respect, mutual respect. It's really important to have respect in a relationship and any kind of dialogue, because if you don't respect others' views or respect them as a person, you're not really going to benefit or learn from or listen to them. You're just going to be thinking that you have all the answers and you know the best way forward. So I think respect is really, really critical, and just this general idea of having good culture and good values and high integrity.
What does it mean to disagree well?
There's a bit of humility, I think, that's required in disagreeing well. Not easy, because we all have a strong ego and we all ultimately are trying to, even if we think we're listening, we may be just waiting for the other person to finish talking so that we can counter argue with whatever they've just said to us. And so I think that having humility, I think, is really important in disagreeing well. And I think being open to challenges and not viewing it as an attack. This kind of gets back to my comment on respect. When you're having a discussion and you're disagreeing, you should avoid attacking the individual, so-called ad hominem attacks. You really should be attacking the issue. If you have a different view, then you can counterattack or counterpoint on the areas you disagree on, but not the individual, because I think that is where emotions start to come into play and people kind of shut down. So I think, first of all, you need to be open. You need to be humble. You need to avoid personal and emotional conversations or attacks. And then ultimately, you need to have an open enough perspective to or be willing to change your mind. If someone puts forward a better case, and this happens in my business all the time, we make investment decisions here. And sometimes you just arrive at a decision. You say, actually, you have a good point, and I have to change my view. And it's not because it doesn't make you yourself look any worse as an individual. It just means that you are open to learning and to growing and willing to change your perspective. That doesn't mean, though, that you shouldn't have a strong view. I like to say, like, there's a difference between confidence and certainty. I like to be confident about my views as an investment professional or as a leader in my business. You need to have some confidence about the way forward. But that doesn't mean that you're certain it's the right way. It's the right thing to do. You think it's the right thing to do, and hopefully it is. But if it isn't, you need to be prepared to change course and adjust. And I think that's where this idea between like everything absolute black and white, yes or no, versus yes, I believe it's the case, but I'm willing to listen to a better argument. And if so, I'm willing to change my perspective.
And what role does disagreement play in your work and how do you handle it?
In my work, actually, a lot of what we do is debate and try to arrive at the best decision possible given imperfect information. One of the things about private equity investing, and actually this is a good metaphor for life, I think, is that you never have all the information you need to make a decision. I wish it was like maths, where if you add the numbers up in a certain way, you can arrive at exactly the right answer, because maths can be like that. But most, certainly in my business, which is about making investments in an uncertain world with risks and projecting into the future. And the same thing I would say about life. And I'm sure you've experienced this too as a young person. You don't always have all the information you need to make a decision. Most of the time, in fact, you never really have all the information. Sometimes you have very little information. And so either you can just avoid making those decisions, which is, sometimes is the right thing to wait until you have more information. But ultimately, you need to then make decisions, and you need to avoid the paralysis that comes from wanting to have perfect outcomes in everything, because we don't always have perfection in life. So we need to kind of go with what we have and take it forward in the direction we think is right based on the information and discussions that you're having. But then when new information comes up, and when it could be a disagreement with someone who has a different perspective, or it could just be completely new information that you learn from reading or from hearing or from discussing with someone, when new information becomes known to you and it conflicts with the previously held information that you had about the direction you were heading, you, I think, need to be prepared to shift your direction a bit. It's usually not too late to change your perspective. And in my business, there's a lot of discussion and debate. The best debates and best discussions are the ones where you genuinely are having a very good exchange of views with different opinions, and everybody feels intellectually and psychologically safe to disagree. One of the problems in an organization or in a meeting or whatever conversation where one person is too dominant is that the other person doesn't feel safe to disagree, because he or she's going to feel like, I'm just going to get attacked, or I'm going to get shut down, or this person's going to insult me or make fun of me or ridicule me. So one thing you really should never do, and certainly in my business kind of environment that I try to create in my firm, is to make anybody feel unsafe. You need to create the psychological safety so that everybody feels comfortable to disagree, and to disagree with their bosses, with their supervisors, so that if you don't have that environment, then the more junior people are going to be afraid to speak up. It's going to be dominated by the more senior people. And then oftentimes what happens actually is that the younger people, the people that are actually closer to the situation, because they're really working on a particular project or meeting the companies, and the senior people are kind of more removed. So if you don't have that perspective from the younger people, you're actually missing a very important part of the discussion. And so it's really important to create an environment where you can make people, as I said, feel safe and comfortable speaking about what they really truly feel.
And just building on that for the final question, do you think you could tell me if there was a disagreement that you'd wish you'd handled differently? And if so, what would you change about that?
I think it goes back to some of the decisions I made early on in my career where I felt like I didn't want to listen to other people's views as much. We made the wrong investment decision in those cases, where we probably would have been better to give more weight to the doubts that other people were expressing about a particular deal, not allow myself, who was sort of, say, chairing the investment committee discussion, to allow myself to kind of direct the decision too much in one direction. I mean, I've made so many mistakes, both in my personal life and my professional life. I think you learn more from your mistakes than you learn from your successes, actually. And I think that the key there is to take on board those lessons from those mistakes, and to then change your behavior in a way that's real, not just pretend to take on lessons, but actually feel like, okay, grow as an individual and understand kind of this kind of self-awareness or self-knowledge that you have as you get a little older and experience more life experience. I think you kind of understand yourself a bit better, understand your biases, understand where you may have blind spots, and then taking that on board and taking the lessons from those mistakes and improving. And I think that's the key. Everybody makes mistakes. It's a question of how you then move forward, get back up and move forward and sort of improve and do the best you can.
Thank you so much.